One of you bends more, one of you edits more, one of you swallows more words, absorbs more disappointment, and rearranges more of who they are, and just to keep the relationship from friction. And both of you know who it is. You just never say it out loud. Because the moment you name it, the entire illusion of equality in your relationship collapses. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Most couples spend years avoiding. They call it compromise. They call it flexibility. They call it we balance each other out. But if you actually tracked it, if you kept an honest, unflinching record of who changes their preference, who drops their opinion, who rearranges their schedule, who sacrifices their comfort, who edits their emotional response to keep the other person stable, the ledger wouldn't be balanced. It wouldn't even be close. One of you is doing the vast majority of the adjusting, and the other one has come to expect it so deeply that they don't even register it as adjustment anymore. They experience it as normal, as just how we are. And the person who bends, they have been bending so long, they have forgotten. They have forgotten that their original shape, even how it looked like. So today I'm going to break down exactly how adjustment imbalance forms and what it does to both partners psychologically, and the signs that one of you have been or has been adjusting so much that there is almost nothing left of the person they were before the relationship. So here's the pattern. It never starts with one person demanding and the other submitting. It starts with one person having slightly stronger reactions. Not louder, stronger. A sharper tone when they are disappointed. A heavier silence when they don't get their way. A withdrawal of warmth that lasts just long enough to create discomfort. And the other person, the one who's more attuned, more empathic, more conflict averse, learns something they never consciously chose to learn. That the cost of holding their position is higher than the cost of letting it go. So they let it go. Once, twice, 100 times, 1,000 times maybe, until adjustment isn't something they do, it's something they are. They have been reshaped by the relationship itself, and the person who reshaped them has no idea that they did it. So a woman, she was 41, married 14 years, intelligent, articulate, the kind of person who had strong opinions about everything before she got married. Career, politics, parenting philosophy, where to live, how to spend money, strong, clear positions. 14 years later, she couldn't choose a restaurant without checking her husband's mood first. Couldn't plan a weekend without calculating whether it would conflict with his preferences. Couldn't express frustration without first running it through an internal filter. Is this worth the reaction that I'll get? She used to ask herself. She didn't describe her husband as controlling. That's what makes this so complex, by the way. She described him as particular. She said that he liked things a certain way. He had strong preferences. He wasn't aggressive about them. He was just consistently, quietly firm. And over 14 years, his firmness became the dominant gravity in the relationship. Everything orbited around him, including her. She told me something that crystallized the entire dynamic. She said, I realized I don't have preference anymore. I have calculations. Every choice I make isn't based on what I want. It's based on what will cause the least disruption. That sentence, I don't have preferences, I have calculations, that is the psychological fingerprint of chronic adjustment. When your desires stop being desires and become risk assessments. When wanting some things require a cost-benefit analysis of your partner's reaction before you can even feel it. You haven't compromised. You have been consumed. slowly, invisibly, by a dynamic that looks like partnership but functions like erosion. Her husband wasn't a bad person. He just never had to adjust because she did it for him every single time she did it. So, what's actually happening when one partner becomes the permanent adjuster? There's a concept in relational psychology called accommodation asymmetry. It describes what happens when one partner consistently suppresses their needs, preferences, and emotional responses to maintain relational stability, while the other partner rarely or even never does the same. Over time, this asymmetry becomes structural. It stops being a series of individual choices and becomes the operating system of a relationship. The adjusting partner develops what psychologists call a tracking self. Their primary psychological function shifts from expressing their own needs to monitoring the other person's emotional state. They become hyper attuned to micro shifts in their partner's mood. A change in tone, a tightening of the jaw, a specific silence that signals displeasure. And they respond to those signals preemptively, adjusting before the conflict even materializes, solving a problem the other person hasn't even voiced yet. From the outside, this looks like emotional intelligence. It looks like attentiveness, like being a good partner. But there is a critical difference between attentiveness born from love and attentiveness born from self-preservation. One expands you, the other erases you. Meanwhile, the non-adjusting partner undergoes their own psychological shift and of course in the opposite direction. They develop what's called the entitlement creep because their preferences are consistently met without resistance. So they begin to unconsciously believe that their preferences are the correct ones, that their way is the default, that the relationship naturally organizes around their needs. Not because they demanded it, but because it's always worked that way. They don't see the adjustment happening. They just experience a relationship that feels smooth, functional, and aligned with their worldview. And they have no idea that smoothness was purchased with someone else's identity. This is the cruelest feature of adjustment asymmetry. The person doing all the work is invisible, and the person benefiting from it is oblivious. 5 signs that the adjustment in your relationship is dangerously one-sided. Sign number 1. One partner's preferences consistently win. Where you eat, what you watch, how weekends are spent, how money is allocated, how the house is organized, how the children are parented. If you trace the pattern of outcomes, not the pattern of discussions, and the patterns of what actually happens, one person's preferences are reflected in the life you are living. The other person's preference only exists in suggestions that were heard, acknowledged, and quietly overridden. That's not compromise. That's compliance with better packaging. Sign number 2. One partner checks the other's partner's mood before speaking. Watch for this before expressing a need, a preference, or even an emotion. Does one partner glance at the other first? Read the room? Assess the temperature? That micro assessment, that split-second calculation before honesty? That is the behavioral signature of the adjusting partner. They have learned that self-expression has conditions, that it's only safe when the emotional climate permits it. And they perform that weather check so automatically, they don't even know they're doing it anymore. Sign number 3. One partner has changed significantly since the relationship began, and the other hasn't. Look at who you both were when you met. Has one of you retained their hobbies, their social circle, their opinions, their emotional patterns? while the other has quietly shed theirs. The partner who looks the most different from who they were before the relationship isn't the one who grew. They are the one who reshaped. Growth is addictive. You become more yourself. Chronic adjustment is subtractive. You become less. And the difference between those two trajectories tells you everything about who has been bending and who has been standing still. Sign number 4. Disagreements end the same way every time. One person states their position, the other punches back initially, then folds. Not through dramatic surrender, through quiet phrases. Fine, okay, whatever you think. It's not that important. Each of those phrases is a white flag. Not because the issue wasn't important, but because continuing the disagreement felt more costly than abandoning their own position. When one partner consistently exists conflict by conceding, that's not resolution, that's a tax. And they are the only one paying it. Sign number 5. One partner feels exhausted. For no clear reason, in fact. Not physically exhausted, existentially. A tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. A heaviness that has no obvious source. Because the source isn't workload. It's the invisible cognitive and emotional labor of constant self-monitoring, of editing in real time, of performing a version of yourself that keeps the system stable, while the real version of you sits in a locked room getting smaller every year. Chronic adjusters don't burn out from what they do, they burn out from who they can't be. So here's what both partners need to hear. If you are the one adjusting, your flexibility isn't a virtue anymore. It was once. In the beginning, it came from love, from genuine care, from wanting the relationship to work, but somewhere along the way, it crossed a line. It went from generosity to survival. And now you are bending. You're not bending because you want to. You are bending because you have forgotten how to stand. And every time you swallow another preference, edit another feeling, absorb another disappointment without speaking, you are not keeping the peace, you are funding it. With parts of yourself you can't afford to lose. And if you are the one who never adjusts, your comfort isn't evidence that the relationship is working. It's evidence that someone else is doing all the work to make it feel that way. The smoothness you experience isn't mutual harmony, it's one person's silence purchased at the price of their own identity. And if that silence ever breaks, and it will, you won't be dealing with a compliant. You will be dealing with years of accumulated erasure. And that's a debt that no apology can settle quickly. So if this is your dynamic, the repair begins with visibility. The adjusting partner needs to say out loud, clearly, that I have been adjusting to keep this relationship stable and it's cost me more than you know. Not as an attack, as a fact that's been invisible for too long. And the non-adjusting partner needs to do the hardest thing that they have never done in their relationship. Sit with that statement without defending, without explaining, without reframing it. Just receive it. Because the adjusting partner has been receiving for years. It's time the other side felt what that weight actually carries. From that point forward, adjustment becomes conscious, tracked, reciprocated, not perfectly but intentionally. Both partners take turns bending, both partners take turns holding their ground, and both partners develop the tolerance for the friction that real equality produces. Because equal relationships aren't smooth, they are negotiated, and negotiation requires two people who are both willing to be uncomfortable, not just one. If you have been the one adjusting, I want you to hear this clearly. Your ability to adapt is remarkable, but it was never supposed to be a permanent sacrifice. It was supposed to be reciprocated. And if it hasn't happened, that's not your failure. That's your signal. The person you were before you started bending, they're still in there. Quieter now, compressed, but not gone. And the moment you stop adjusting out of fear and start expressing out of self-respect, that's not the moment the relationship gets harder. That's the moment it gets honest. And honest is the only foundation anything real can build on.